Hello and welcome to another episode of Legion by the Numbers. I'm Joe Eames, and in this episode we are going to be looking at the last Phase 1 heavy option that's available outside of the named options. So we're going to put up some links to a couple of videos I just talked about in the two previous videos, the Z6 versus the RPS-6, and then the Z6 versus the DC-15. And in both those videos I showed how the Z6 is inferior to those two weapons. The RPS-6 in most situations, the DC-15 in just about everyone. If you haven't seen those videos, I recommend you go watch them. That also outlines a lot of the damage that the Z6 itself does and looks at those statistics. So today we're going to cover the other weapon, the DP-23, which is an interesting weapon because it's a short range, only range 2. So this is unlike the Z6 and the DC-4, there's a huge difference between range 2 and range 3, arguably a lot bigger than the difference between range 3 and range 4. And I say that because getting into range 2 with a unit is really hard to do. Getting into range 3, a lot easier. But getting into range 4, obviously pretty easy. But getting into range 2 is just a lot harder. Really, it tends to expose your units. So a range 2 weapon needs to be something that's really powerful. And of course, the DP-23 with its Pierce 1 has on its surface the illusion of being very powerful. So in this video, we're going to compare that to the Z6. We use the Z6 as our baseline, compare the DP-23 to the Z6 with the same caveat that it does not have, it is different than the Z6 because it's a shorter range weapon. So you can only use it when you're at range 1 and range 2. Personally, I've used the DP-23 quite a bit in some of my games, and I've overall found that it's not a great weapon. I don't like it. It can be useful a little bit more in the more defensive objectives when you can be on the defensive, you need to hold a position. But overall, I just haven't been able to use it very effectively. I know a lot of people that do play with it and like it, but here in this video, we're going to look at the stats and the numbers of the DP-23 and compare it to the Z6 and then by extension the DC-15 and the RPS-6 as an option for your heavy weapon. So let's quickly outfit our Phase 1 Clone Trooper with the DP-23, and again we're going to go with that additional Phase 1. As I mentioned in a previous video, I really think that with the current prices you should always go with the Specialist. It's only 1 point more and gives you that aim, dodge, or surge token at least once during the game. So I really like that, but we're just going to go with the Phase 1. We're not going to worry about any gear. Again, the one thing that could affect things is the targeting scopes, but and maybe we'll look at the numbers for that. But that's going to be our outfit. He's at 84 points. It is worth talking about the price. The DP-23 is 22 points. It's a point less than the Z6. Again, because of the range change, I'm not convinced it's a great buy. If this was like 10 points, I would be all over this DP-23 unless it needed range. But, well, let's look at the numbers here and go forward. But it's good to at least cover the things that are different about it. With 1 point difference, it might as well be the same cost. So let's head over to our dice simulator. So we're over on legionbuilds.com/dice. This is the Legion Builds dice simulator that I built to sort of do these analyses and run these numbers. So again, we were at 84 points for those guys. Now would be 85 for the Z6. Let's just outfit the Z6 first. That's 5 black because we have 5 regular troopers and then 6 white. There's no special keywords that they have for the Z6, and that does 4 points of damage. Now let's switch this over to the DP-23. So he's got himself 2 black and a white plus Pierce 1. So instead of 6 black, we got 1 white, and instead of 6 white, we have 1 white, and instead of 5 black, we're going to have 7 black, 5 for each of our 5 troopers, including that extra, 2 for him, and then that Pierce 1, which is kind of like our magical number, the thing that really makes the big difference. So the baseline damage here is 3.75. It's actually less, but that's because we're not throwing a defender in, so the Pierce hasn't had its chance to shine. So let's start looking at various scenarios with troopers and armor as well. So let's go back to the Z6 and let's run some basic ones. When we're shooting against, we're going to go against with no cover initially, and then we'll do light and heavy. So white with no surge like a B1, the Z6 is going to be doing 3.3. Against more like rebels, it's 2.6. And then against other clones or stormtroopers, 2.0. So there's our baselines. Now we'll click on this result to load up the profile for the DP-23. And let's go ahead and give our defenders. So we have the white defender with no surge, white defense dice, no surge, so like the B1s, where we were getting 3.3, now we're getting 3.6. A little bit better, but wow, not necessarily a big difference yet. And that's the thing about Pierce, and that's one of the cool things about the dice simulators. It shows you that where Pierce really matters is against the tougher defense die. Red, or even red with surge to block, that's where Pierce really starts to shine. So against rebels, it does 3.2 instead of 2.6, so a much bigger gap. It was only like 0.3 against B1s, but against rebels, now we're looking at like 0.8 damage difference. And then red, no surge, we were getting 2 points of damage with the Z6. With the DP-23, it's 2.76 points of damage. So a big jump up in damage, but you have to get into that extra range. So let's run these same sort of numbers. Let's just stick with, I like sticking with red as sort of my baseline. Although white surge to block is maybe a good average. Let's look at white surge to block and go with light cover. So 2.0. Sorry, we're going to do that again. Now we're going to do it with heavy cover. So 2.0 against light cover, 1.5 against heavy cover. Now with the DP-23, we'll go with white surge to block. Light, we were getting with the Z6 2.0, and we're getting 2.5. And against heavy cover, we were getting 1.5, and out of the DP-23, 1.8. So the cover also starts to take away the difference between the DP-23 and the Z6. Now, one thing I think is actually interesting to see is, what if you actually are at exactly range 3 with your DP-23 unit, and you need to shoot, there's nothing else valuable for you to do, or at least you want to know, should you shoot or should you dodge, right? Are you going to actually do any decent damage? So I think that's a really interesting question to ask. So let's just adjust our DP-23. We're going to go down to, we're going to remove the DP-23, and instead of 2 black, it's going to contribute 1, because that same unit will now just be using its regular weapon that's a range 3 black, but the pierce goes away. So white surge to block against heavy cover. Again, with the Z6, we were getting 1.5. Or was that a 2? I think we were getting 2.0 with the Z6. So let's roll this and see what we get. We get 0.89 points of damage, where with the Z6 against white and heavy cover, we were getting, and under heavy cover, we were getting 1.5. So there's a pretty big drop off there, 0.89 to 1.5 if you're shooting at heavy cover versus the Z6. And a much bigger chance to not do any damage, 40% instead of 20%, double chance. So you can shoot at range 3, but it looks like shooting at range 3 isn't, it is still an okay, even against heavy cover, right? White surge to block, what's that like if we go with, let's go back to that DP-23 and go red, no surge, and heavy cover. Now 0.67, about a 50-50 chance to do some damage. You're occasionally doing more than 1 point of damage, but about a 50% chance just to even do damage. So against red and heavy cover, it's still okay to shoot, but just understand that you got about a 50% chance of missing. You throw in a name because you maybe have that specialist or something else, but you're at longer range. Now you're at 1.1, but if you can move into range 2 and shoot, obviously a lot better idea to go with the DP-23 because against red with no surge to block, you're getting 1.6. Big jump up from either the numbers that you get without that DP-23. So there's the outline for the DP-23. It is a great weapon. Against troopers, it does do more damage than the Z6, but we can also see that it's around the cap. It seemed like the gap was around 0.7 additional points of damage. That was at light or no cover and against like your red or white. So if something's not in cover, the range 2 weapon, but boy, that range, I haven't been able to use effectively. Interested to hear what your thoughts are if you use it effectively. Let's look at one more scenario. Let's go back to our Z6. Where do we have one of those? There we go. There's our Z6. Let's look at white, search to block in light cover, but let's give the Z6 an aim and see what it does. All right, 2.8 points of damage for that. Now let's go back to the DP-23. We're going to go white, search to block in light cover, and give it an aim and see, does the aim make much of a difference with that DP-23. So 2.8 and 3.4, again, about a point. That's only 0.5, 0.6 difference. So roughly the same difference. So the aim doesn't really majorly change the amount of damage you're going to do. So even if you have a lot of aims, that doesn't necessarily make the DP-23 an obvious choice. Now let's look at one more scenario. Let's look at going against armor. So we'll go back to the Z6 and just get our baseline numbers. White, search to block, no cover, and armor. You're going to expect the Z6 to do 1.1 points of damage. And with the DP-23, let's see, did we have an aim? Oh, we had an aim on, do we have an aim on that? 5.6, yes, we had the aim. With the aim, it's 1.1. Let's run this again without the aim. Okay, 0.92 without the aim. With the DP-23, no aim. We're going to go white, search to block, no cover, and armor. Instead of 0.92, we do 0.9. So it's basically the same. I just want to double check that I got that right. One pierce. It's really kind of the same. And I think that has to do with, even though it does have that pierce, which is going to stop the defender from being able to use one of its defense die, it has fewer dice, so it can, the crit fishing isn't as effective with that DP-23 as with the Z6. Now let's look at the same numbers, go back to the Z6 and look at red, dice, armor. Now you're doing 0.69 without an aim, and for the DP-23 red, you're doing 0.9. Now the gap's closed even more. So against armor, it doesn't make a big difference. That pierce really isn't a critical thing against armor. So I like the idea of the DP-23. I think it's a cool weapon. It can really make a big difference if you say you're going to be shooting at something that just red dice surge to block a trooper like a Jedi. That can really make a difference because the Jedi usually aren't immune pierce. They're immune to melee pierce. Some of them are, I think, are immune to pierce. But overall, I'm just not a fan of the DP-23. Interested to hear your thoughts. Did I miss anything? Any scenarios that I didn't cover that you'd like me to cover? Appreciate you spending your time watching this. Leave me a comment. Leave a like. Be sure to hit subscribe as well. A lot more of these videos coming out. We'll be looking at the two named heavies as well for the phase ones here coming up soon. So hope to see you in another video.